Before we can record MIDI, we have to set up to record MIDI. Just like we do with audio, there's a certain amount of work involved in setting up for MIDI. Now I'm going to start with an external MIDI keyboard or drum machine or any other MIDI device that we want to record that has built-in sounds. And then I'll show you how to do it with one of Pro Tools' virtual instruments. So setting up a MIDI rig, the first thing that you need to do is make sure that your computer recognizes the keyboard. And you should have some kind of a MIDI interface, or you've connected your keyboard using USB or FireWire based on the type of keyboard that you have. And under the setup menu, we can bring up an Apple utility called Audio MIDI Setup. And here's where we can see a MIDI interface that we might have and all the devices we've connected to it. If I have, for example, an M Audio keyboard, I may see something very simple, like the name of the keyboard. And what I have for this is each device connected just by drawing lines to the inputs and outputs on my MIDI device. Again, for something as simple as an Ozonic or another MIDI controller keyboard, it may just be one in and one out. Now that means that Pro Tools will recognize that this keyboard is attached to the computer. The next thing we need to do is make sure that Pro Tools can receive information from that keyboard. And once again, we go to the MIDI menu and we look at Input Devices. This lists all of the devices that Pro Tools thinks are connected to the computer and which ones can send input into Pro Tools. Right now I have every single one of them checked. I may want to Option click. Remember, Option usually selects everything, and uncheck everything, which means nothing will be recognized. And I'm just going to click my Triton Extreme, which is a keyboard, a Korg keyboard I have that I use as my master controller. So now the only keyboard that I can use to control Pro Tools is the Triton Extreme. I'm also going to check my pre, which is my DigiDesign pre interface. Pro Tools actually communicates to the pre using MIDI. And I'll also check my Hand Sonic, which is a little percussion controller I use to put drums in, made by Roland. The next thing I want to do is add a track, and we add it the same way we add an audio track. Shift-Command-N, and I can use my Command down arrow to change from an audio track to a MIDI track. Now notice that there's no option for mono, stereo, or so forth. Again, we're just recording ones and zeros. There's no such thing as audio when I have a MIDI track. I have to convert the MIDI to audio, which I will show you how to do later. Over here it says ticks or samples, and we'll talk about that in a later lesson. For right now, I'm just going to leave it at ticks, and I'll click Create. And here's my MIDI track.